Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good wherever you are. I'm your host, that little astro chick, the channel where we discuss the natal charts of writers, authors, events, and anything else that I find interesting. So first, I wanted to say happy holidays, especially because we're going into winter solstice, which is the longest night of the year. Santa has left me with a present, which has been that my cycle came early. So I am incredibly tired right now. I'm most likely going to make this video and then take a shower and go to bed or fall asleep to some holiday movies. But I did say that I wanted to look at this natal chart because I was just curious about what was going on. So unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure you've most likely heard about the quote-unquote CEO killer. So the suspect that allegedly murdered the CEO of United Healthcare. And social media has been rallying around this man. I believe his name is Luigi Mangione. So before I get to the natal chart, I wanted to just give my own experience with United Healthcare, and then I'm going to get into Luigi's natal chart. So back in 2019, I turned 35, and I'd had this really prophetic dream the night before my birthday that I had drowned in my own tears and that my womb had fallen out of me. And I told a friend of mine at the time because I was living with her, and she was like, stop being dramatic. Turned out I actually did have a lot of major health issues during that time that were related to my womb and were related to my fertility. And I needed to have a myectomy because my doctor at the time saw that as being the only way to literally save my life. Otherwise, I was going to, oddly enough, exsanguinate from my womb because I was losing so much blood and my heart couldn't keep up. I had United Healthcare at the time as my insurance provider. They didn't want to pay for anything. They didn't want to pay for any of the hospital visits, the doctor's visits. I had to go to the ER because my cardiologist was afraid that I was going to go into cardiac arrest. I showed all the signs for it. They didn't want to pay for that either. And their reasoning was because the issue that I was having is not something that men get. Women are the only ones who get that because women are the only ones that have uteri, or is it uteruses? I don't know. So my claim was denied. And then I had a couple of other events happen, but United Healthcare, they weren't going to pay for that claim. So if my doctors had not been so creative with like the dates for the surgery, and honestly, if I hadn't lost my job because my job didn't want to pay for this surgery either through the insurance, deductibles hella high, they would not pay for it. And if it wasn't for that, I probably would not be on this recording because the health situation that I had was really bad. I didn't have any pre-existing conditions. It was a genetic issue that came up, and United Healthcare was kind of like, we don't care. It's not something that happens to men. We don't care. So when I found out about that CEO who was, gunned down, okay, I'm going to be really honest. I didn't care. I didn't care either way. I didn't care about his family or about the people in his life where he could have had a positive influence on them, I suppose. I didn't care because he was the CEO of a system where there are literally hundreds and thousands of bodies underneath him. And then I guess he got bodied by Luigi. And the internet was excited about it. They were making memes. I know a lot of people like to say that like Black Twitter is savage. White people are hella savage when they get a shot to, play their eat the rich fantasies. But I digress. My genuine opinion on this is that I don't think it's something to celebrate, but I also don't I wouldn't fault anybody for it, and I'm saying that especially because of my own experience with United Healthcare and the way that they treated me when I got sick. But I did want to take a look at Luigi's chart. I'm pretty sure that there have been plenty of people that have looked at his natal chart. I saw a couple of views on TikTok. I haven't watched those, so I'm just going to go into this cold with what I have because I was able to find it. So according to the sources that I have, Luigi Mangione was born on May 6, 1998 in Towson, Maryland. So the first thing that I noticed about his chart, and I'm just going to go all over the place with this, is I like to take a look at people's nodes first. So the nodal axes will give us an idea of who they are in terms of the big picture. And he is a Virgo North node. So what that means is that in a previous lifetime, Mangione could have been somebody who probably mistreated their body and their physical health. Could have been somebody who was on drugs because Pisces South nodes, they tend to deal with a lot of drug issues. Could have been someone who was involved in a scandal, and he's been involved in a scandal again this time. So the assignment for him in this incarnation is to learn that he is not special, that he has to get to work like everyone else, and he also has to be somebody who can provide an assistance. And when I think about the news coverage and what's been released about him, I do see him as being someone who probably lived very much within that Pisces South Node vibes, in the sense that he has now currently been involved in a scandal, and that he will be in prison because Pisces also deals with imprisonment. That this could be somebody who could be held up as an icon because Pisces also deals with icons. But in this lifetime, he is supposed to be concerned about his health as well as being able to establish a routine and being in of assistance to others. And there's a part of me that wonders if he is convicted because he has been charged rather quickly, if he is going to go into that Virgo North node for the next part of his life, and if this crime was a part of it. And I say that because his Pluto, which is at the 7th degree of Sagittarius, it squares that North node. So in natal charts, when you have Pluto squaring the nodes, as Rubina likes to say, it's like a take me to hell aspect, because Pluto deals with, on the more positive ends, it can deal with empowerment, it can deal with things that we don't earn, things that we might manage, our deepest desires. It can also deal with the exposure of the underbelly in some sort. And sometimes when you have it to where Pluto squares the north nodes, this could be indicative of disease. It could be indicative of death. So in this case, maybe taking out this CEO could have been a part of him getting to that north node status. Because as I said before, if it squares the nodes and it's Pluto is one of the planets that deals with death. So maybe this death could have something to do with him involving what his karmic destiny is going to be. The other thing that I noticed a lot about his chart, just in terms of thinking about what it's like for the murder in and of itself. I'm not expecting this to get monetized. Is that his Chiron, which is at the 15th degree of Scorpio, it is in direct opposition to his Sun and his Mars, because his Sun and his Mars are conjunct in Taurus. So typically speaking, people who have their Chiron in Scorpio, these are people that tend to deal with a lot of issues around empowerment or feeling disempowered. And then when they have their power taken away from them or threatened, then this is going to be a time in which they may lash out in some rather underhanded ways. I know based on the news coverage, they had discussed Mangione's manifesto, how he himself had a lot of issues with his health, and this was a time in which he felt disempowered. Another interpretation of this could be, I've only watched this a little bit, is that when he saw the way that other corporations and CEOs were taking advantage of those who were sick, that he could have witnessed them being disempowered, and he could have maybe felt the need to avenge, a way to empower himself, as a way of saying that this will happen no more, that he was just on the start of a revolution of a vigilante. Now, I do have another video on this channel. I believe, I cannot remember her name, but it was the author who had her book contract taken away because it turned out that she was bullying writers of color who had a book that was released at around her time. She too had a Chiron in Scorpio. So this could deal with having a sense of being very disempowered. The other thing that I noticed is that his Chiron also squares his Uranus, which is at that 12th degree of Aquarius. Now, the number 12 in and of itself, this could deal with tragedy. It could also, another interpretation is that it could deal with some type of expansion or something that gets large, because those numbers, they break down into 3, and 3 is a number that deals with Jupiter. So it could be that his Chiron was activated at a very sudden event, especially because it does oppose his Sun and his Mars in Taurus. And because you have that Chiron and it squares his Uranus as well, this is another interpretation. There could be this idea that maybe he could have been bullied or made fun of in the past, or that this could be a way of gaining infamy through a group of people, since Uranus, it deals with things that are far away, things that deal with wider audiences, and especially because it's in Aquarius, which is the home of Uranus, this could deal with the internet. So I wonder if this could deal with some sort of notoriety that might be gained through internet fame, because a lot of people are cheering him on. I might be cheering him on silently. I don't really post on socials like that, but this could be a way for him to gain this type of fame or this type of notoriety that he currently has right now. Another thing that I noticed is that he also might be someone who might have a lot of drive and a lot of desire to obtain security and possessions and wealth. And I say that because he has his Sun and his Mars. Those are both conjunct in Taurus. So Taurus in the zodiac, it's represented by Venus. I believe it's the only planet that is either dignified or exalted in Venus that doesn't deal with any other planets. So for example, Libra, it is represented by Venus, but it's also represented by Saturn. And Pisces, which is exalted when it's in Venus, is represented by Neptune originally. But Taurus is the only one where it's just represented by Venus and Venus alone. These tend to be people that deal with a lot of prestige. These are people that care a lot about their esteem as well as about possessions. These are people that might be more defined by legitimacy in their life. And I believe that he came from having a very privileged life. He could have been someone who might be very charming and very charismatic. And I say that because he does have his Sun at the 15th degree of Taurus. The number 15 in someone's natal chart, it's usually going to deal with somebody who is able to acquire a lot of possessions, who might be very charming, because that number 6, it breaks down, 15 breaks down into 6, and the number 6 is ruled by Venus. The other thing I would say is that because of this Venus-Mars conjunction, he also might be someone who puts a lot of energy towards his possessions as well as his esteem and his legitimacy. And possibly when it's threatened, it could end up having a catastrophic event for him. So I say this because for a lot of people where they have their Sun and their Mars conjunct, it tends to produce a lot of drive, a lot of passion. These are people who can be very ambitious, who can be very driven, but these are also people that can really access, they can really access that part of themselves when they're really, really upset about something. And that can tend to have a lot of disastrous effects on their lives it could also deal with this just conjunction in particular. It could deal with someone who might be perhaps a little bit narcissistic, someone who could be very self-centered because Sun and Mars, they represent me. It's all about me. Typically speaking, these are people where they might be in positions to where they usually have to control things, or they might feel like they're not going to get their way and they might be controlled. And I'll also say that there could be some evidence for that because his Mars and his Uranus, those two square each other. Now, this might be kind of interesting. I've noticed in some of just like the quick research that I've done from the social media scrolling, how many people have been talking about how handsome he is and how good looking he is. And I'm certain that there is going to probably be a lot of letters flooding in from women who might say that they might be interested in trying to date him, or, well, they can't really go out, but mailing him letters. They might be trying to mail him letters. And I wonder if that might come in from that Mars Uranus square. Typically speaking, people who have this type of square, they can have incredibly interesting intimate lives, personal lives. I would say that maybe when you have like a Mars in Taurus, these are people who could be very sensual. I mean, talking like in the bedroom. Like they might give off the impression of being kind of vanilla, but I would say with that Uranus, I mean, there could be something kind of interesting going on. So I wouldn't be surprised if convicted and he stays in jail, if he ends up having multiple wives, especially with the square. I mean, it's really, really weird. I do think that he is somebody who probably does get probably more than his fair share of attention from whoever his preferred gender expression is. And I say that because his sun trines his moon, because his moon is at that 21st degree of Virgo. And typically speaking, when men have sun trine moon in their charts, this could refer to someone who could maybe have more children because the sun represents children. These are people where their emotions and their persona are going to be more closely aligned. This is also somebody who might be a little bit more comfortable with expressing his feelings. And I'll also say because his moon trines his Mars, and I just now saw this. This could indicate someone who might be very good at selecting who their partners are. So who knows, maybe when he's getting all of those letters, when he's in prison, he's probably going to be able to select the perfect wife for him. And because he has his Venus in Aries, which typically speaking, it's going to be in its detriment when it's in Aries, but he'll probably select someone who's going to be just right for him. She also might be very good looking because of that Sun Mars conjunction in Taurus. And he might prefer someone who will be a little bit more submissive. And I say that because the moon in Virgo, it could deal with a preference for a woman who could be very submissive, who could possibly deal with this assistance. And it's interesting because, as I said at the beginning of the video, that his north node is in Virgo. Now his north node and his moon, they're not conjunct. They're just they just so happen to be in the same sign. So I did think that was particularly interesting. Another aspect that I think is interesting is that his sun squares his Neptune. No, sorry, not his sun, his Saturn. His Saturn squares his Neptune. And his Saturn is at that 26th degree of Aries. Saturn is in its detriment when it's in Aries because it's going to deal with someone who could be very hard-headed, possibly someone who has a broken bone. I believe that when he went through his health issues, he was having some type of problem with his back, and he was having an issue with getting insurance to cover it. I also kind of wonder if this could have something to do with maybe the desire for the bullets, because he wrote something down on the bullets. I also would not be surprised if he put a lot of thought into what he inscribed onto the bullets when he took that CEO out of here and into the upper room, because he also has a Mercury-Saturn conjunction. So Mercury deals with handwriting. Saturn is something that is for a very long time. So I wouldn't be shocked if he had spent a lot of time with writing down what he did on those bullets that the police found. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, because I said I was going to talk about the Saturn and Neptune square. So typically speaking, Neptune deals with our insecurities. It deals with things that we might want to hide from people. It can also deal with scandal, drug use, as well as imprisonment, because Neptune deals with prisons. And I wonder, perhaps with this Saturn-Neptune square, if his desire to hurt other people. Oh, and I just thought of this now. I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place. With the Mercury and the Saturn conjunction, this also could have something to do with that manifesto, because he did have a manifesto about how he was going to target these other CEOs, and he spent a long time writing it, and he had planned to get caught in the McDonald's with the Starbucks. He put a lot of thought into this, by the way. I mean, a lot of thought. It was like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. He is somebody who is very methodical. This could be someone who could be very smart, but very smart in a very like self-focused type of way. So kind of like me. Sorry, I just realized that as I was looking at the chart. It's been a while since I've done one of these. But I'm wondering, back to the Saturn and the Neptune square, if this could have a long-term implication that perhaps he might regret. I know, typically speaking, for people that have a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, usually these are people who either could be imprisoned, or they might have a loved one who's very close to them who's imprisoned. They also could be someone who might have a lot of contact with prisoners. I believe that Bell Hooks also had this in her chart, and she had done some work with prisoners in the past. But I'm wondering, though, if because we do have this square, and his Neptune is in the 2nd degree of Aquarius, the number 2 deals with the moon, and he's also a life path too, so that also deals with the moon, as well as a sense of home and heritage being very important, homes being very important in this lifetime. If he's going to have some type of regret later on when it comes to what he has done, perhaps this could represent being robbed of a home or being imprisoned away from a home. And this also will be very interesting because his Neptune, it's currently in conjunction with Pluto, because Pluto has now flipped back into Aquarius, and this could have something to do with being perceived as a scandal, as being elevated to the status of an icon, because Neptune deals with icons, and because currently you have that Pluto-Neptune conjunction, you have more people that are like, I'm glad that you took him out, he should have gone to the upper room. But I do wonder, though, because I think looking at his chart, he's either currently on his Saturn return or he's about to go through it. If he could possibly have some regrets around this later on. I mean, I genuinely don't know. It was just something, that I was thinking of, is that even though we're all rallying around him right now, is there a possibility that when the publicity dies down, that he's going to be sitting alone in his prison with his tons of letters from these beautiful women who want to be with him, and he will probably make a good selection out of those women? Will he feel bad about losing his home? I don't know. I think at this point, I've said everything that I wanted to about Luigi's chart. I do need to get back more into the groove of doing these. I also might do one that's going to be on video, not on videos, but on transitions. But I did want to have a chance to just take a look at the chart. I do realize that I am late on this trend because I'm late to everything. But please feel free to leave me a comment if you would like. What do you think about Luigi's natal chart? Do you think that he's going to be living it up for a long time? Do you think that he might be living more in his Pisces South Node bag? Do you think he's going to get to that North Node and Virgo bag? I don't know. I'm just curious. But that now concludes my reading on Luigi Mangione. Thank you very much, and I will see you soon.